we have completed our discussion on two types of phosphorylations, which are those, the substrate level phosphorylation as well as the oxidative phosphorylation. So what is the commonality between them? What is common between them? Both of them produce ATPs. So if both of them produce ATPs and cater to the energy needs of the cell, what would be their differences? What are their differences? Of course, I know you all know this because we have discussed SLP and oxidative phosphorylation at length. But quickly, to just summarize their differences, what are the points we can list? What are all the points we can list? First of all, their definition itself, right? In SLP, how is ATP synthesized? It is synthesized by the direct transfer of phosphate group from a high energy molecule to the ADP, to give ATP. And you all know this type of reaction is catalyzed by enzymes called kinases. So to put in a nutshell, in SLP, ATP is synthesized by enzyme catalyzed direct transfer of phosphate group from high energy molecule to ADP. So I hope that you remember those high energy molecules, at least one or two. One is being the phosphoenol pyruvate, the other is diphosphoglycerate. Is it not? In fact, when we look into the metabolic pathways, particularly degradation of the glucose, you will see two or three more steps where SLPs take place. On the contrary, on the other hand, what is oxidative phosphorylation? Here, ATP is not synthesized by direct phosphorylation from direct combination of phosphates to ADP. Rather, how is it synthesized? It's in an indirect manner by utilizing the energy produced by the oxidation of two coenzymes, NADH and FADH2. And the energy liberated here is conserved, transformed into ATPs through what do we call the ATP synthase mechanism, the chemiosmotic mechanism, where the proton gradient is established, and then when the protons flow back, they give energy that can be converted into combination of phosphate with ADP to give ATP. So indirectly it is synthesized, right, by deriving the energy from some other reaction, that is NADH and FADH2 oxidation. And where do they occur? Yeah, substrate level phosphorylation occurs in cytoplasm. It has to occur in cytoplasm as well as in mitochondrial matrix. That's the inner core of mitochondria, the cavity which is filled with fluid, that is called mitochondrial matrix. It occurs in both sites. But what is the site of oxidative phosphorylation? There is an exclusive site, is it not? It doesn't occur anywhere in the cell except in the mitochondrial membrane, where the electron transport system is situated. Is it not? Particularly the inner membrane of mitochondria, the cristae, there the oxidative phosphorylation occurs. And very big difference, very important difference. The SLP doesn't require oxygen, whereas OP requires oxygen. And what is the role of oxygen in this whole process? It's the terminal electron acceptor of the ETC. Since the SLP does not require oxygen, it is universal in nature. That means it occurs in all organisms, aerobes as well as anaerobes. So anaerobes are those which survive even without oxygen, like your yeasts. Therefore, if there is no oxygen, no oxidative phosphorylation through ETC. Therefore, the cells have to do only SLP to get their ATP needs, to meet their ATP needs. Whereas oxidative phosphorylation is exclusive, is only found in aerobes. In anaerobes, which do not have this mitochondria, or at least its primitive forms of mitochondria. Anyways, we will not go into the evolution of cellular biology too much. The oxidative phosphorylation happens. Example, in yeast there is no oxidative. In anaerobes there is no oxidative phosphorylation. Therefore, the key differences between these two processes have been listed out like this. And of course, whenever such things are discussed, I must also add a tag to this, that this is a very important question to your exams here. Differentiate SLP and OP. One of, at least once in every 2 years, you are going to get one question definitely out of this topic. Difference between SLP and OP. Or at least sometimes they ask, what is the characteristic features of SLP? What are the characteristic features of OP? So I hope you should remember these things. Anyways, so with this, we have completed our discussion on this first unit, that is the bioenergetics. So what does bioenergetic teach? What did bioenergetics teach us? That how the ATP plays a central role in the energy transductions of the cells, and is popularly known as the energy currency of the cells, and which are the two pathways which produce ATPs. And we also studied those pathways fairly in detail, is it not? Okay, now we will move on to another big unit in your syllabus, that is metabolism. Right, so metabolism. Now we have heard of this word many times, even out of our science classes, is it not? Metabolism. So I hope all of us have fair idea. You have a very fair, at least some idea of what metabolism is. And in fact, if we are asked to define metabolism, there are different definitions given. But what is the simplest of all those definitions? Is this. It is simply the sum total of all the chemical reactions that are occurring in a cell, that are happening in a cell. This is metabolism. So as I told you in my initial classes, a cell is an entity which resists the change in entropy, and it is a unit which is autonomous, right? So how has it become autonomous? That it has to conduct a lot of chemical reactions. In fact, of course, go back to that question, what is life? And I told you there are different people answering these questions in different ways. Philosophers answer this differently, artists answer this differently. And for a chemist like us, what was the answer we gave? What is life? The life is what is the living organism? What is the answer to us? The living organism is the one which resists the change in entropy, right? And how that is the characteristic of a living organism. But how does it achieve this? By conducting lot of endergonic reactions. But whether endergonic reaction or exergonic reaction or whatever a reaction, any reaction which is going on in a cell is a part of one or the other metabolic pathways. Okay, so if you group all these chemical reactions together and want to give a name to it, metabolism is the name, right? Okay, so metabolism is classified into two important pathways, into two important sets of reactions. Can somebody give that answer? What are the two classes of reactions in metabolism?
Anabolism, catabolism.
Yes, very good. Yeah, anabolism and catabolism. So these are the two important pathways. So what are catabolic pathways? Catabolic pathways are those reactions which amounts to breakdown of a bigger molecule into smaller molecules. That is what catabolism is. And what are the products of catabolism? Most of the times, the product of a catabolic reaction will be a very small molecule like carbon dioxide, ammonia, or water, along with energy liberation. And energy liberation is always in terms of ATPs. So whenever a catabolic pathway operates in a cell, ATPs are usually synthesized, right? And smaller molecules are produced from catabolic reactions. Therefore, usually catabolic reaction is called a destructive pathway, right? Anyways, the word appears to be very harsh to listen, right? Destructive. It is not as destructive as I'm explaining. Rather, a disintegrating pathway. where complex molecules are broken down into simple molecules and energy is obtained because of this process of breaking down. And what is anabolism? Exactly the opposite of this. If a cell or a body of a living thing does only catabolism, it simply vanishes, dissolves in air. Everything, every component of this becomes oxidized and simply vanishes. It cannot do that. It has to do reactions which are constructive also. Is it not? Which are constructive also. You know, like there are some. I mean, when people uh, started to understand, to watch nature, the early man, or even our early cultures, they have wondered the processes of nature. They have looked at up nature with huge amazement. What is that? For example, how can there be a big banyan tree growing out of a small seed? Is it not? ಒಂದು ಹರಳು one, I mean, like what is the size of a fig tree, right? Banyan trees, fig, or even the pupil tree, arali mara, hatti ಹಣ್ಣುಗಳು, arali ಹಣ್ಣುಗಳು. The seeds are almost invisible, so small. But then a big tree comes out of it. How? That has to be a constructive approach there. Because of catabolism, the energy is released. I mean, ATPs is released. Using that ATPs, the cells grow, they multiply, they become tissues, they organs, organisms. All those set of reactions which amounts to building of molecules is anabolism. So, and if you have to pictorially depict this, usually we see that catabolism slices the molecule, whereas anabolism builds the molecule. So catabolism is almost like bringing down a building to its pieces, bricks, and anabolism is the reverse way, building the building brick by brick. But there is something which is uh, connecting these two pathways. This is very important. A cell, of course, has independent catabolic and anabolic pathways. There is no doubt. But there should be a connector between them. So, and that connector is this ATP. Please remember this. Catabolism is so catabolism uh, is the machinery, I mean, a set of reactions which give ATP, whereas anabolism uses ATP. Fine. So what is this ATP? It is playing a central role. It's the bridge between catabolism and anabolism. So if there is no catabolism, there is no anabolism. And of course, it is also true in the other ways. There is no anabolism. They are supplementary, complementary to each other. They complement each other. They supplement each other. Whatever we can call this. So if we dissect the reactions and understand them, you can classify those reactions either into catabolism or anabolism. But we should have what we call that macroscopic vision of the life processes. Yeah, not very microscopic vision. When we have this macroscopic vision, when we have that overall vision of the life cycle, we see that our life processes, we see that catabolism and anabolism are intertwined with each other, networked within each other, and there is a fine balance between them. Okay, there is a fine balance between them, which is sustaining the life itself. Okay, anyways, so I hope you understood this catabolism and anabolism. Of course, we'll study a lot of reactions under catabolism, so you can understand more later also. But at this point, it's like this. Okay, fine. So, okay, can you give one or two examples for each kind of reactions? Yeah. Okay. Can you give 1 or 2 examples for catabolic reactions? Because I think you know these things beforehand. Yeah. 1 or 2 reactions. Examples for catabolism, catabolic reaction, or at least a pathway.
Glucose to
Yes.
pyruvate.
Yes, good. Yeah. What is that pathway generally called? Glucose to pyruvate. What's the name of that pathway? How does that happen? Conversion of glucose to pyruvate. Glycolysis. Is it not? So glycolysis is an example for catabolism. Krebs cycle is an example of catabolism, as well as your oxidation of fatty acids, again examples of catabolism. So all those oxidative degradation reactions which gives us ATP are catabolic reactions. Similarly, can you list 2 or 3 anabolic reactions pathways? Yeah, 2 or 3 anabolic pathways. Examples. They are building part, yeah, constructions. From small units, large macromolecules, polymers have to be made. Some best famous examples for this? I think you know. You just have to connect the things you know to this term of anabolism. Yeah. Anyone? Yeah. Okay. Waiting answers in chats. Photosynthesis, of course, is anabolic. Very good, yeah. Srijani, photosynthesis is anabolic. Why? It uses carbon dioxide and water and makes glucose. So from simple molecules, it is building a bigger molecule. And is it an energy consuming process or energy releasing process? Photosynthesis is, of course, energy consuming. It consumes the energy in the form of light energy, right? So it is anabolism. As well as your protein synthesis, anabolism. DNA replication, anabolism. Biosynthesis of numerous compounds in the cells like alkaloids, terpenoids, lipids, steroids, hormones. All these things are anabolic reactions, right? In fact, cell division itself, the whole process of cell division is anabolic. It derives energy due to catabolic reactions and uses it to replicate, to multiply. So cell multiplication is anabolic. Therefore, anabolism and catabolism are two features of uh, life processes. But now, don't forget, ATP is the linking point here. Okay, now, so we will now move on to studying catabolic reactions, few pathways, not every pathway, of course, it's impossible to study every pathway with the time limitations we have. Few pathways in catabolism, which your syllabus tells. That is glucose oxidation, fatty acid oxidation, as well as protein metabolism, amino acid metabolism. And before that, as I told you, catabolism is energy yielding pathways. So whenever there is a compound which gives energy, scientifically we can calculate how much energy is liberated from that. And the answer is called calorific value. Is it not? So even glucose, oils, lipids, they are also called fuel molecules. For bio engines, yeah, for life engines, they are fuel molecules. Similar like petrol, diesels are fuel compounds for your vehicles, engines. These are all fuel molecules. But these fuel molecules have to be quantitatively characterized. How much energy is liberated that if you, for example, you burn 1 gram of glucose? Similarly, how much energy is liberated if you burn 1 gram of an oil? So if you do such an experiment, the answer gives you the calorific value of fuel molecules. Maybe that you have seen labels on the food packages, is it not? And nowadays, almost it is mandatory that every food package should contain the information on the calories it has. So, for example, if you look at the biscuit packet, the mean, lot variety of biscuit packets are available in market, but every packet has this label on it. What is the total energy it gives? Carbohydrates, how much carbohydrates it has, how much proteins it has, how much sugars, oils, trans fats, cholesterol. All this information will be there. And maybe you have seen figures like this, right? Calories, 350 kilocalories. Fine. So what do you mean by this 350 kilocalories, the total calories? If you eat 100 grams of that food inside the pack, you are going to get 350 kilocalories. And of course, there will be a breakup of these kilocalories also. Sometimes, like out of this 350 kilocalories, how much is given by carbohydrate? How much is given by protein? So this is what the nutritional value of a food is it not? But there is a rough guideline of how much food is to be ingested. What's the food intake? Roughly for men, it is 2500 kilocalories. And for women, it is 2000 kilocalories per day. Okay, per day, yeah, not per time, per day. It can be much lower than this, what I am showing. If you eat maybe um, uh, very highly packed food, such calorific requirement is there, but generally it is much lower than this, about 1500 usually for men and women kilocalories per day. That's the energy requirement of our body, only 1500 kilocalories per day. So for example, if this package giving us 350 kilocalories and 1500 is the daily requirement, maybe you have to eat some um, 4 packs like this for a day. Enough, is it not? So, but how is it scientifically addressed? Using this term calorific value. What is that calorific value which we find everywhere on food packages, on our like for example floors, corns, everywhere this calorific value label will be there. So what is this calorific value? It is defined as the amount of heat energy obtained. But please, we have to be cautioned, bit careful here. Anyways, let us go by the definition. It may be defined as the amount of heat energy obtained by burning 1 gram of foodstuff completely in presence of oxygen. Okay. So calorific value is obtained in vitro, not in vivo. What is the difference between these two terms, in vivo and in vitro? In vivo is inside the cell. In vitro is outside the cell in a laboratory. So calorific value is obtained for a food like it is obtained for other fuel molecules, petrol and diesel. Therefore, the total energy obtainable in a food is the calorific value. But we have seen that all the energy present in a food, we will also see later, will not be used by the cell to make ATPs. A lot of energy is wasted. Anyways, but as of now, calorific value is the total energy obtainable from a foodstuff. If you burn 1 gram of a foodstuff, how much energy is obtained? That is what the calorific value is. So for different food components, there is different calorific values. For example, which is the ready source of energy to us? Carbohydrates. It has about 4 kilocalories per gram. 1 gram of carbohydrate, for example, 1 gram of sugar, glucose, gives us 4 kilocalories. Whereas proteins also almost in the same range, 4 kilocalories per gram. But usually proteins are not the first source of energy for us. Fats are of course first energy sources, 9 kilocalories per gram. So typical average calorific value of different components of food is like this. So now if you have, for example, a eatable which has such percentage of carbohydrate, so much percentage of protein, so much percentage of fat, and you know their calorific value, you can yourself calculate the total calories, is it not? by simply multiplying that with the percentages. Now, when this is the energy given by food molecules, it is independent of the diet. It is simply an experimentally determined calorific value. But how much calories do we need? I told you about 1500 kilocalories per day. Okay. And when you, okay, anyways, this is what important piece of information here. What is the calorific value of petrol, for example? I mean, the most commonly used fossil fuel, petrol. What is the calorific value? It is 11,000, around 11,000 kilocalories per kg. So per gram means you should divide it by 1000. So if you do that, you will get 11 kilocalories per gram. So the fat oil, example, you see, look at that, is 9 kilocalories per gram. So petrol is more efficient than an oil. But we can't consume petrol as a foodstuff, of course, because it is having more calorific value. But this information is only for a comparison sake. Okay. You see, oils are also not bad fuels for vehicles. Yeah. You know, when when those engineers, the Carnot and all, Carnot cycle, Carnot's engine, if you remember from your thermodynamics, they were experimenting with their combustion engines. They were using edible oils as their fuel, not petrol, diesel. Then they were using edible oils for their fuel. So they're not bad fuel either. In terms of calorific value, it is 9 kilocalories per gram, whereas petrol gives you 11 kilocalories per gram, almost near. But of course, to qualify as a fuel, only calorific value is not required, right? There are other parameters also. The exhaust, the waste it generate, all those things are also compared. I mean, accounted. Anyways, so these are the calorific value of a food. But generally, how much, what percentage of energy out of the 1500 kilocalories we take a day go to different activities? Uh, Anyways, you first please send your names in the chat box for the attendance sake. I'll just continue the class. Yeah, please send your names in the chat box. Generally, about, we all tell that we require energy for physical activities, for exercising, all those things. But factually, 70% of our energy expenditure is for involuntary life sustaining processes like breathing, circulation, digestion. For these, 70% of our energy requirement goes there. Okay. And of course, for the brain activities, all those things, energy requirements are involuntary processes, 70%. And 20% goes towards physical activities. So the movement of muscles, the physical activity, the movements, muscular movements, voluntary physical activities, 70% go. And remaining 10% is used for something called thermoregulation, to keep our body temperature at almost in a constant range, whether to decrease the body temperature or to increase the body temperature depending on the environment. So this thermoregulation process is also energy expending process. So 10% goes there. So of course, that is the reason why do we feel exhausted, hungry when we exercise a lot, or when we play games, after we play games. Why? Because the energy reserve of our body has gone down. Then we have to take food and replenish it. Otherwise, the energy is not sufficient for your involuntary activities, life sustaining activities. That's what. But there is also one more interesting picture of this. We have different organs in our body. Do you know which organ consumes most energy? Which is the most energy consuming organ in our body? Of course, this is not subjective. You can't tell, it varies from individual to individual. For me, it is this, for her, that is that, for he, that is the what. No, it's the liver. It consumes about more than 20 to 23% of our energy. Liver. Followed immediately by brain, about 19% energy consumption. Okay. So like this, you can break up the energy requirement using different criteria, either organ wise or activity wise. or sometimes uh, the different specific activity type. For example, reading how much consumes, and running how much energy it consumes. And don't think that if you sleep there is no energy consumed at all. Of course, lot of energy is consumed during sleeping also, because all your involuntary activities are still going on. Yeah, because you sleep, you don't stop your heart from beating, or you don't stop your brain from working. They do work during sleeps also. So energy is continuously expended, utilized from by the body. Fine. So in the next class, we are just going to see how much we are going to see how this energy is given. ATPs are produced by the oxidation of these three different types of foodstuffs: the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins.